everybody. Welcome to the Open Mic Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. This podcast is here for everyone on the open mic comedy circuit, whether you're a comedian, an MC, a promoter, or even a tutor. Hey, even comedy fans who do enjoy watching the stars of the future in pub basements. If you're thinking I could do that, then this podcast will guide you on what to expect on this crazy circuit from those right in the middle of it. Today's guest is someone who's comfortable performing in front of 5 or 500. He sets pulses racing, but needs to watch out for his own. Just don't look at his ECGs. He's got a bucket load of experience and not of the KFC kind. So please welcome to the stage. It's Mr. Duncan Hart.
Very nice. A very good introduction. Thank you very much.
How are you doing, mate?
Impressed. Glad to be here. We were saying just off air that I'm actually probably the closest geographically to you.
Yes.
Literally just around the corner in the same town.
I know.
Stevenage, that comedy mecca.
Oh yes. It gives us performers from Stevenage who always end up coming up with the same joke of St. Arvanage at some point or another.
Absolutely.
So how are you doing?
Honestly, I'm all a bit flustered. I literally got up. We've got builders in at the moment, and so the office is a bit of a mess. And but as I said to you, it's a metaphor for my life. I'm never really that prepared. I just sort of wing it, and I'm fine. I'm good. I've actually been listening to the podcast myself, so it's an honour to be asked to be on.
It's no problem.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm enjoying it.
I have to get a local lad on.
Thank you.
And that's not just the only reason.
No. I mean, well, I'm partially disabled as well, so I tick one part of the diversity quota.
I'm not even going down that route.
No, I know. I'm not that disabled.
So come on, give us some of your background, because I for like full disclosure, I met Duncan at a gig about 3 weeks ago for the very first time, and then you kind of start learning about other people, and you kind of find out there's a backstory to everybody that you didn't quite expect. I mean, I could tell from when you were on stage how your mannerisms and stuff on stage, and how you were conducting yourself, and how confident you are that you were quite experienced. But I don't think I quite realised just how experienced you are.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. I'm very experienced or a massive failure.
Not a failure.
Depends how you want to. I mean, I started years ago. So I knew I wanted to do comedy when I was a teenager, probably younger than that. Originally I wanted to be a scientist. When I was a young kid. Specifically, I wanted to be a Time Lord. When I realised that that wasn't a career option, I thought, I wouldn't mind being an actor. And I learned all about TV, and I thought, I wouldn't mind playing the Doctor. That'd be quite fun. And then I got into like comedy, and I used to record Monty Python and listen to the Goons, and like the head repeats on satellite channels. And when I was quite young, sort of 10 or 11, I used to write out scripts verbatim from Monty Python and perform them at school with my mates, at assemblies. And then I sort of used to watch Dave Allen and Jasper Carrott. And then much later, I discovered people like Bill Hicks and Eddie Izzard. But I suddenly thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be funny for money. I just love the idea. So I was obsessed as a teenager onwards about becoming a comic. Or originally, I wanted to be part of a group, like Python or something like that, and write and perform my own stuff. And then about the age of 17, I discovered Bill Hicks and Eddie Izzard and various other people. And I'd come to the conclusion that actually the best thing to do was do your own stuff, because it's only you that's responsible for it. And so at the age of 17, I thought, right, I'm going to start performing. And it took me 2 years to actually make the leap from the idea of going on stage to actually doing it. Funnily enough, the very first person I spoke to was a guy who used to run a lot of gigs locally called Paul B. Edwards, who we've now become quite good friends, and I've performed with him many times. But back then, he didn't know who the hell I was. I was this snotty 17-year-old phoning up saying, "Can you give me a gig?" And he ran pro nights in the air, and he was like, "No, I can't." Who are you? Anyway, he gave me some advice. He said, "Look, go get Time Out magazine," because back then Time Out used to have listings for all the gigs that had open spots. And back then in the sort of 90s, you had listings of gigs that would have pro acts trying out new material, opens. There's none of the bringer, none of that. Literally, you phone up, you'd get your name in. Time Out as well in the listing sometimes. So I remember the first gig I ever had my name listed in Time Out. That was a oh my god, I've made it moment.
Yeah.
And I think it was 1997 January I did my first gig, and I did my first 3 gigs at the Comedy Brew House, which was at the Camden Head where Angel are now.
Oh, okay.
So before Angel had the Bill Murray, they only used to do the Camden Head.
Yeah.
I played there a few times back in the day in the sort of 2010, 2011, I think. But before that, I'd done quite a few. I did my first few gigs there at Comedy Brew House, and I was hooked. I'll never forget my first gig. It was absolutely terrible. I died completely on stage, and I forgot my material. I did 30 seconds, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I apologized and walked off. And it was awful. It was awful. But the guy who ran it, John Lane, was really, really supportive, and he said, "Don't worry, mate. Come back. Learn your material. Come back." And about a couple of weeks later, I came back and I stormed it. I got a standing ovation on my second gig.
Wow!
And I walked off stage thinking, "Wow, where's my TV series?"
Yeah.
And then the third ever gig I did was back there, and I recorded it. It wasn't as good as the second gig, but it was much better than the first gig, and I've got a record of that one somewhere in the archive found not long ago. The second gig was interesting because I just I went off script, even though I knew the stuff. I went off script, and I think that's the reason the crowd loved it, because I did a lot of audience crowd work. So I did that, and then on and off for a few years, I sort of toiled. Sort of hung around the open mic circuit, and I actually went to university as well in London with the aim of doing the open mic circuit. But actually, by the time I got to uni, I became more interested in booze and birds, and I just didn't do much with the comedy at the time. Because I did film at university and radio, and I set up a radio station at uni, or helped set one up. And so I was doing lots of creative projects there. I didn't really do much of the comedy in that period. And then I sort of came back out. I think I'm in an abusive relationship with comedy, because basically I keep coming back to it. I leave, I come back, I leave, I came back, I come back. And I had a long period out, and then I went to the Edinburgh Festival in 2005, and I hadn't performed for a couple of years. And there was a course that was being run by Laughing Horse, and I thought, I actually went up just to go and watch some shows for a couple of weeks. My mate was a student at the University of Edinburgh. He's doing his PhD in artificial intelligence, which seems kind of apt these days. And I did a 2-day course, which again is one of those things. I did the first gig I did on the course, I didn't have any material, and so I died. There was only 2 of us on the course and the tutor, but I was like, I didn't know, so I was so ashamed that I went home and I wrote for about 20 hours, literally just sat there and writing, and that what I wrote became the basis of my career for the next sort of 10 or 15 years. I wrote so much, and it was obviously it changed, but there was a lot of material in there that some bits I still use today, or remnants of it. And then so basically I did that. I was at Edinburgh, that was good fun. Then I started to take it very seriously and sort of turn it into a job, try to get regular work. And I found I was particularly good at emceeing, which is strange because I'd always see myself more as a writer, really. And so I was doing a lot of emceeing, and that's where I got a lot of my paid work. I'm just sort of going around the country, doing loads of gigs up and down, lots of driving. But at the same time, I was working in TV behind the scene. And there became a point, sort of about 2014, where I was getting a lot more TV work, and it was much better paid. and trying to fit that and the traveling with the comedy was just one of them had to go, and unfortunately it was the comedy. I sort of at the time felt like I was getting bored of emceeing. I didn't really, not that I didn't enjoy it. It was just that I was writing all the time, but I was never doing the stuff I was writing because I was so scared to try out the new stuff. So I was just doing crowd work and the old bits that I knew. Occasionally I might chuck in the new. And the other thing is trying to learn stuff that you write. So it's all a bit chaotic. So I basically left in 2014 after having done quite a bit. And then I came back in 2019 in Brighton. I was down there putting a TV show together, did a few gigs, loved it. Thought, oh, you know what? I think I might go back. And this time I'll just go on the open mic circuit, just get all my new material out there.
Yeah.
You know, don't worry about turning it into a job. Just enjoy it for what it is. Work towards a one-man show. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. Then I became very, very ill. And I was in and out of hospital quite a few times. And I basically came back. I went back down to Brighton for a TV show in 2023. Did a few more gigs and decided that was going to be my return. I was going to come back and do it, take it seriously. And then then when I came back to Stevenage, I became very, very ill. I was in and out of hospital, and I'd sort of given up. And because I'd been doing a lot of gigs at Brighton, I booked a gig at Folkestone through an old friend of mine who I used to work with on Russell Howe's Good News. He runs a pro gig in Folkestone. He said, come down, do a middle spot, you know. And I hadn't done anything for 6 months. And I was actually terrified. I thought, I am going to die here. I'm going to let everyone down because I'd been busy on a work project, and because I'd assumed when I booked that gig that I would have lots of other gigs in between, but I didn't. I had about 6 months out again. And I went there, I was absolutely terrified. And I genuinely almost pulled out. But I thought, you know what? I don't want to let him down. I'll go, look, even if you die, what's the worst that can happen? You know, at least you've done it. And I did it, and I had a great gig. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do it. And so that was it. And I thought, right, okay, now I need to take this seriously. But I've been so out of the open mic scene in London that I don't know anything about it, really.
I was going to ask, so you've been in and out of it for a while then. So how's that? Have you seen the scene change now from the early days to what it is today?
I mean, so I used to help run Laughing Horse gigs at one point at Camden, and we'd do it was a mix of it was like a new material night, you know. It was acts doing their new set, more established acts doing new material, and then there was a proper headliner and things like that. I think we charged a £5. We didn't get a huge amount of audience, but we tend to get between 4 and 10 in a room that held about 30, you know. We'd go out and do a bit of flyering, you know, but these days it seems to all be bringers or stay. It's changed, basically. There seems to be a lot more bringers, and there seems to be a lot less. I mean, I don't know, but there seems to be a lot less sort of acts that have a mixed bill, you know, with nights that have a mixed bill with pro act, you know, new acts on. You know, I understand why bringers are a thing. That's not, I don't have a problem with them per se. I get it. I quite like the nights that have a mix of, if you're brand new, it's a bringer. If you're more experienced and doing longer spots, then it's not necessarily a bringer. But I've also heard of pay to play, which I don't know much about. I don't know if there are actually gigs that do it. But
I haven't seen any pay to play in London's as such. I've seen there are some nights that try to obviously entice the donations, and some like to take the some nights will go, if you're an act, they're like, no, we don't want anything. But some are, you know, if you're an act, then they kind of possibly still expect you to contribute.
Right. Okay.
But then there's those nights, some of those nights that do that as well. They'll also give you like the bit promotion, so they'll put the effort in for Facebook posts and website links and stuff like that. So that's always I think it's quite a nice little fair trade off, you know, in that it's a little bit pay to play. You are kind of paying to rent your stage time, but it's not just that. You are getting something else at the end of it as well, even if it's just a record of where you've gigged in the past. It's quite useful to look back on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, my thing was I genuinely thought I'd probably end up living in Brighton by now. And the scene down there is quite different. And bizarrely, it reminded me of when I was starting out. It was just, there were lots of really nicely run. None of them are bringers down in Brighton. And there's some wonderful people on the scene down there who are really, really supportive. Particularly James Onions is one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met. He was very complimentary. He'd seen a few YouTube vids, and he gave me quite a few spots when I was down there. There's a whole load of people. There's a bunch called Kool-Aid Comedy. They do some wonderful. They're all just very lovely people, and I've probably forgotten a load. But yeah, I'd always thought I'd end up in Brighton, living down there, and I could just sort of work my way around the open mic scene down there. But it's become readily apparent that I probably won't be able to move there for some time. And so I was like, well, I'm sort of stuck in Stevenage. I need to, it's either sit there and write and not perform, or it's going out, it's making the best of what you can. So that's basically what I've been doing. And I'm in that very weird place because whilst I've got very strong goals in terms of what I'd like to do, moving where I want to be, I don't want to just jump back onto pro bills and start, doing the same old stuff. I really just want to concentrate on trying out all the stuff that I've written. But it's that thing of trying to convince people that you're not shit because they've not heard of you. It's a really weird. So I'm in a really weird, because I've got a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And I think I'm quite good, but I'm not, it's that thing. I don't have enough of a profile just to sort of rock up to a gig and go, hey, do you know me? Can I get 5 minutes? So it's fine. It is what it is. You just have to play the game and start at the beginning again in a way. But I've been very lucky. The sort of, I've done 10, 12 gigs since coming back, and people have seen me and offered me paid work, and I'm happy to take whatever. So that's
I think when people see you perform, they've realised that, how can I put this? You shouldn't be on the open mic circuit.
That's very kind of you.
If you know what I mean. I've been trying to think of how to describe certain people and how I see myself on stage and how the persona somebody gives off. And there's, how do I put this? You have this presence on stage, is that you kind of fill the room and your voice fills the room. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself correctly here or not, but I know that when I talk on stage, it's kind of monotone and it's not really loud, but the way you come across, it fills the room, and in some way it takes away any of like the little breaks of awkward silences in the back, if you see what I mean.
I see what you mean. Yeah, no, I used to do a lot of theatre. I mean, I was in the National Youth Theatre for a bit, and as I say, I wanted to be an actor. I did a lot of local theatre. There was a really good local theatre group in Hitchin. Quite a few famous actors have come from it. There's a guy, lots of people I'm still friends with. There's a guy called Howard Reed, whose daughter was at one of the nights that we did together, who's well known for Little Howard, Big Howard. He's a writer. There's a guy called Tim Downey, who is Danny from Toast of London, and has been in Paddington and various other things.
Okay.
Ben Hull, who's been in Hollyoaks and various other things. There's a whole load of Ben Whishaw is probably the most famous one. So there's a whole group of us from that youth theatre who are sort of involved in the performing arts. Whereas I sort of went the other route. I went the more writing, directing, editing sort of side of things. I like putting things together in the edit. So I'm often sitting there writing voiceover scripts or going through footage and working out how best to put things together in a funny way. And that's sort of been my job for quite a long time, which I really enjoyed, but it's long hours. And it, as I said, it doesn't necessarily leave a lot of time for performing. But having done that for quite a while, I now want to get back to performing and writing. So it's kind of like I've proved myself in the world of TV. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I sort of now want to go back to the performing. And, it's that thing. I've never done an hour. Although I've got about 4 hours worth of material.
Yeah.
But I've never really done an hour. And I write every day, as you probably know. We are from the writing group.
Yeah,
stuff just splurges out, which is quite good because when you're putting together an episode of TV, sometimes I'll have to write an episode of voiceover in a day. It just comes out, so you've got to be quick because you're being paid. You've got deadlines and things like that, and you've got to put together. The last thing I did was a 20-part. No, the last thing I did was a 50-part series.
Wow,
which it's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
Before that, I did a 20-part series. that's a lot of writing, and a lot of editing. So, but the thing is, the TV world at the moment is in chaos. It's in freefall. So there's a lot of people out of work. About 70-80% of freelancers. Commissioning's down. It's in real flux. So I don't know if I'm going to have a job going forward. So I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm a bit lost.
So with your stand-up then, a little teaser question is always, can you remember the first joke you ever told? Whether it's as a child or an adult?
I was a child or an adult. I could tell you the first joke, I could tell the first jokes I ever wrote when I was 13. I think I talk about them in my set. The first one was, it's a circumcision gag. I thought about becoming Jewish, but I'm not cut out for it, was the first joke I ever wrote. And then the second one I ever did was I actually wrote a fake Valentine's card to my chemistry teacher that said, my heart goes like your experiments. Boom. Both about 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the first two I remember. I also used to come up with these little bits of philosophy that I thought were really funny or really kind of wise. And then I found out they were actual phrases. Like one of mine I came up with is, I believe something along the lines of, I believe in moderation in everything, particularly in moderation, which turns out to be a French phrase. Like there's a French phrase.
Yeah.
And life is a terminal disease, was another one I thought I'd invented, but I didn't. It was someone else. Yeah.
So what about the first joke you ever told on a stage?
On a stage, I think it was something along the lines of, hello, my name is Duncan Hart. I'll be practicing safe comedy tonight. I'm wearing a condom. Don't worry. You know what they say, if a glove fits. If a glove did fit, I'd be a bit worried because that would mean I'd be like a mutant cow and it'd be more like a glove. It wasn't a great joke, let's be honest. It was a ramble. It was some sort of riff on that. And then that was the basis of a load of callbacks. I don't do that joke anymore because it's not very good. And that was the very first. I did that and then I forgot the rest of my material and died. You can see why. So
that first moment then, when the first ever gig, is that your worst ever time on stage?
God, no. No. I've got two worse gigs than that. I mean, I think that's the thing you've got to realize, that you will die. Even when you've been doing it for a while. I mean, I did a gig not that long ago. I did my first 20, and that was a struggle. And that was basically my fault because it's the first 20 I'd done in a long time. But it was fine. I got through it. I got some laugh. No, but the worst gig I ever had, actually, I've got two, and they were both horrible. So the worst one, and this is a truly awful gig. And it affected me for quite some time, and you'll probably understand why. So I was doing really well on the circuit, and I made it to the semi-finals of So You Think You're Funny. This was back in the early days, and I was gigging in Brighton the night before. I was up to do the semi in Edinburgh. This was years ago, and I did a gig in Brighton, and it was really, really rowdy. And the crowd were pissed. It was all stags and hens. Yeah. And so I had all this stuff in the back of my pocket that I'd never done, all about anal sex, which so I did it, and it killed. It absolutely killed. I got like applause breaks. It was just what that crowd needed, just what they needed. And so, of course, when I went to Edinburgh to do my semi-final, now I did really well in my heat.
Yeah,
I stormed my heat. And I'm not, this is not a boast, but I just had people coming up to me going, "There's no way that you're an amateur." I genuinely had people that say, "You must be a professional." It was a really, really good heat. I was really pleased. That's probably one of the best gigs I've ever done. Cut to walking out on stage at the Gilded Balloon in front of 200, 300 people.
Yeah.
And I went straight into the anal sex stuff, which A, I didn't do in my heat, and B, killed the night before. I did 5, 6, 7 minutes to utter silence.
Oh.
I have literally the entire crowd hated me.
Right.
Not a single joke. And the worst thing is I had two of my friends in the audience, and they were just sitting there, head in hands. I was so upset. I tried to walk out the room when I came on stage. I was like, and Julia Chamberlain, who ran it, grabbed me and sat me back down in the chair, and I had to watch the rest of the show. And it's that awful, awful feeling of knowing I'm quite good at this. I'm nowhere near as bad. I've fucked up, and I fucked up at the most important gig of my life. I literally derailed my own career at that moment, and it was a horrible, horrible feeling. And I wouldn't advise it to anyone. But it was entirely my fault for changing my set. Why I did that, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But yeah, it was a horrible, horrible feeling because you know, I wouldn't do this if I didn't think I was quite good at it. I'm not. I'm not the best comedian in the world at all, even in my own head. I know my own limitations, but I think I'm quite good, and I really enjoy performing, and I really enjoy writing. That's why I do it. I love it. There is nothing like a room full of people saying, "No, you're wrong. you really are not that good." You know, it's horrible. So you think you're funny? No, definitely not.
Wow.
So that was bad. And then the other one, which was pretty hard, was different. It was one of those. It was not really my fault. It was a paid gig. It was a Christmas gig, and it was basically in a roadside cafe.
Okay.
Like a Fatty Arbuckles in Downham Market. Fucking hell, Christmas. Basically, it was just I thought it was going to be a nice gig, you know, like maybe a theatre or something attached. No, just a load of work people out on their Christmas do. They had a magician, they had a singer-songwriter, and a musical comedian after me. But I was just, I was going on basically doing a load of heartfelt stuff about my life, and they weren't interested. There was no. I was reduced to actually walking. I basically ended up doing crowd work and walking around reading out people's Christmas cracker jokes. And it was a struggle. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, it was the wrong gig to do comedy at. And I'll never forget the manager threw the money at me. Oh, I sat in the car afterwards for about half an hour and just cried. It was really, really, in fact, the actor on after me, did his set, and he saw me in the car, came over, and he said, "Look, don't worry, mate. It was them. It's not you. This is not a proper gig." I mean, he was fine. He was a musical act, so he could just crack on. But that's why I'm always a bit wary when doing corporates or anything like that. You've got to do the room has to be set up for comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, there are rooms that are more playable than others, but you've got to get the basics right, and the audience have to be sort of invested in it. It's like when people ask me, "Do you want to do comedy in a pub?" And a lot of the times they just want to set it up in a mic in a corner of the pub. And it's like, that's not going to work. You know, I mean, I've done things like that, and you can make it work, but you know, it's just if people are there for the comedy, then you're off to a winning start, and then you can just work with what you've got.
Yeah, the whole mic in the corner. Yeah, there's your comedy stage, and you're like, you've got Bill and Terry sat at the bar drinking their pints or whatever, but they're not there for hearing somebody's stories.
Comedy, it's not like music, it's not like magic. I mean, magic, you can wander around, do little bits to a little group of people. You can't go around to in a pub and do the set up to one table and the punchline to another. You know, it's like, it doesn't work. And music's a bit more transitory. You know, so yeah, that's difficult. So those are the worst gigs I've had. So basically, anything else is a piece of piss.
But it sounds like you adapted quite well in the second one, in that it wasn't going that well, so you reverted to a different mode.
That was after 10 minutes of that. I'll never forget the face of this bloke and his daughter. They were just like, "Oh my god!" I mean, they literally were like, "Get me out of here! This is the most cringe-worthy thing in the world." Because I was just doing. I was doing some really heartfelt material. I basically was prepping for what I thought might be an Edinburgh show at the time. Yeah. This was back in 2010, 2011. Yeah, totally the wrong audience. I just wanted knob gags and, isn't Linda from Accounts fat? Or whatever,
right.
Just kind of rubbish crowd work. Not that crowd work has to be like that, but you know what I mean? It was just insults, and I could do crowd work quite easily. You just have a conversation, essentially.
Yeah, I watched one of your YouTube clips of I can't remember how you classed it. Was it like the 10-minute joke?
Oh, yeah. It took me 10 minutes to take a joke.
Yeah. And it was just a constant interruption from the crowd, but the constant banter going backwards. And it seemed to feed off each other. So you're like, just let me get through this. And somebody interrupted. Look, you're making it take longer than it needs to.
Yeah.
And then it go again. And it was just, it was so good to see.
It was quite good fun. I mean, see that I've always been a big believer in recording everything that you do. So even back in the day, I was one of the first people to regularly video sets. And I used to make little documentaries for other comics and things like that on really low budget equipment. Like my mobile phone and a decent mic was all I needed. or a piece of equipment called the Zoom Q3 HD, which is a little handy recorder, which I still have. Basically, you used to get all these sort of moments, and that was Edinburgh. That was my first full Edinburgh. I wasn't doing a one-man show, but I did lots of spots, and I was doing lots of experimentation. I was really experimenting with I was playing with persona. I got really obsessed and bogged down with persona. I got really into the theory of comedy for a period, and I was just trying similar material but in different ways, and I was trying to play a really kind of like downbeat loser character at one point, particularly that Edinburgh. I was doing a lot of, it wasn't always working, but I was like, it was really experimental. Some of the stuff I was doing didn't always work. Whereas now I'm just sort of go on, be funny, and see, it just sort of adapt as to what the crowd is and what material I'm doing. But yeah, the crowd work, it was quite fun, that one, because I was able to make some little videos out of it, of the inability to get to the end of the joke.
Yeah. There's a bit where you walked off, wasn't there?
Yeah. And one of my mates said, what I really like about that thing is that we never actually hear the punchline.
No.
So I mean, I've got the punchline, obviously, but I think it just works better as a video that I come out and to triumphant round of applause.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's loads of that. I've got loads of that sort of knocking about. I mean, my YouTube channel's only got a few videos on, but there's about 100 that are hidden, just because I haven't really worked out what to do with them properly, and I just haven't had time, and I don't want them out there without doing. Yeah, they're there for my own reference.
Yes,
but every gig I do, I tend to try and record and look back on, and there's loads of little moments that I probably will push at some point.
So you mentioned about the worst moments on stage. What about the best? Those that really stand out.
Well, one of the ones I was just doing Folkestone recently at the beginning of the year. It was like my first gig back in 6 months. That was great because it was a tidal wave of laughter. I honestly, I'd forgotten what it was like, and it just sort of knocked me for sick. I'd written a load of new stuff that I couldn't remember quite properly, so I just last minute I ditched half the new stuff and I just did some of the old stuff with couple of bits of the new stuff and a couple of the rewritten stuff. But I was taking my time. Now, when I watched the video back, it just seems a normal pace, but I really felt I was taking my time and just drinking in the applause and the laughter and stuff. And I got a couple of applause breaks, which was very nice. The laughs were good and big. And of course, there's 150 people. So when you're playing in bigger rooms, you're going to get a bigger laugh. But honestly, because the moment before I went on stage, I thought I was going to die. So that was really nice. But probably one of the best gigs I ever had was one in Luton. Again, I went in and I thought, this was years ago, and I thought it was totally unplayable. And there was an act who went on before me. I can't remember who it was, but they died. I thought they were going to hate me. And I went on, and I ended up being sort of crowd surfed across the room towards the end of the set. It was incredible. I didn't know, they loved it. Yeah. Which I don't know if that says more about me or Luton. I don't know. That was like years ago, about 2007 or something. But that was great. I basically thinking everyone. It was a Wetherspoons. It was about 200, 300 people in Wetherspoons. It was quite intimidating. I thought, now I'm going to die here. But no, that was good. That's probably the best times on stage I've had. Best gig although the best gig I ever went to, this is quite fun, was that my dad. The only time my parents have ever seen me, and most of my friends, I did a gig with a guy called Tin and Duyeb. He used to run a gig called Fat Tuesdays in Islington. And the bill, it was me, Tin, and Frank Skinner and Simon Munnery.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, right, okay. And Frank Skinner opened. So Frank Skinner opened. I went on after Frank Skinner, and then Simon Munnery headlined. And in fact, Frank Skinner writes about this gig in his second autobiography, and he's actually talking about my dad in the book, because my dad was by far the oldest person in the room. And he said, he was talking about that particular gig, and he said he looked over and he saw this old bloke with he basically describes my dad laughing his head off, and he said he thought, if you think you're having a good time, I'm having an amazing time, because he is one of these guys who's sort of racked with his own existential self-doubt, like I think most of us are. But yeah, he writes about that gig. So that's my favourite gig, just because in his book he talks about my dad. And of course, I went on to the waves of Frank Skinner. You know, I could have read the phone book and just got laughs.
Yeah, that sounds impressive.
It was great. It was great.
So you talk about you write pretty much every day.
Mm.
So what is your favourite joke you've ever come up with? It doesn't have to be your best joke, your favourite. So I think there is a differentiation between the two.
I've got a really dark joke, which I used to do, and I tried it out a couple of times recently, and it doesn't work, or it hasn't been working. I don't know whether it's the delivery, sensibilities, or whatever, but I love this joke. I was really proud of it when I came up with it. I'll tell you it now. It's my mum and dad. They're really into animals. I think having me was a huge disappointment because the week after I was born, they got a puppy. But our house is like Noah's Ark, except it exists. And recently they got a parrot that they inherited from the local children's home, which had been closed after an investigation. I think some of the people working there were taking the words playtime a little too literally. And it wouldn't say anything at all. I don't know if it was traumatized until one night I turned the light out and it whispered, "Our little secret." I was a bit freaked out when it followed that up by "Who's a pretty boy then?" I like that joke.
I like that joke.
But it hasn't landed a couple of... I don't know if it's because I think I added a bit of extra. I think I've started adding... Oh, I don't know. It hadn't... I don't know what it's seen. It was traumatized. It sort of had a faraway look in its eyes. I don't know if I over-egg that and give the punch away too much. I don't know. But I've done it twice recently and it's got nothing. So,
but that's your current favourite joke.
That's my current favourite. But that's a very, very old joke. I mean, I've got a load that I really like. I really like the mugging one that I do, and I've got loads of others that I really like. One that I've written that I've not done on stage I quite like is I really struggled with addiction. I say struggled. I was actually really good at it.
What about a joke that's evolved?
I've got a routine that you've probably not seen. So that long clip that you see is a routine I used to do about being mugged, which is based on a true story. That has always been quite meta, but it's got even more meta these days. So it used to be basically the premise is I get held up being mugged. And then the guy says, I say something, and the guy says, "That's very funny. What are you, some sort of comedian?" I go, "Yeah, I do a bit of stand-up, actually." And then he goes, "Go on then, tell us a joke." Right, so that's the premise is it was based on actually being mugged and also getting fucked off with people going, "Oh, you're a comedian. Go on, tell us your favourite joke." Yeah. So I put that into that situation. But now what happens with that routine is that then through the conversation, the guy goes, "All right, well, I've always thought about trying it myself. Can I try out a few gags on you?" And then that gives me an opportunity to get my phone out and do anything, but play with it in a meta way. So I can say then he tries some topical stuff out, do some topical, or he tried out some new ones. I might even try putting the parrot joke in that and then see if reframing it makes it funnier. But that basically, when I came back, I thought I might do that at gig. And then I just suddenly thought, why doesn't and then so I just wrote this whole extra conversation. It's very meta. There's a gag in there. It's like where I talk about... he said, "Do you mind if I try some jokes out?" I said, "Not really. I'm a bit of a captive audience, mate. I'm not really not going anywhere. I'm literally a bringer."
That's a great line.
It's all sort of stuff like that, and it's very meta. And I like doing lots of meta things, which sort of that play off the room, the absurdity of what I'm doing on stage and the process of joke writing. I've got one that I do I really like these where I'm just trying some new material out. I'm just going to read some stuff on my phone. And then I stand there just laughing, scrolling through my phone. And then I start acting out, but it's all scripted. So then I sort of go, "Look, it's on the you think that's scripted, but that's written. Look, scrolls up." So it's all very meta. I like that sort of stuff. Adam Bloom talks about boom mic moments in his book, and I do a lot of them, but I do them because I fucking love them.
So with joke writing itself, I mean, I've been quite privileged in that I've seen some of the joke writing within like this WhatsApp writing group we've both been part of.
Yeah.
How do you it sounds such a basic question, but how do you come up with the joke? How do you come up with the joke, the routine? And how do you involve it?
I literally have a funny idea or an idea, like, what was it the other day? Oh yeah, cocaine shark. My brother sent me that and said, surely there's something in that. And my first thought was coked up sharks. Ooh. That's what I call city traders. Okay. That's a start, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I read the article and it was like sharks have been tested for cocaine. I was like, who's testing sharks for cocaine? And then I just, it sort of writes itself. You think, oh, I imagine, police officers stopping sharks and, coke. That's dangerous, isn't it? A coked up, killer.
Yeah.
It's they're already sort of a great, and then you just sort of go with it. And then I started to think, what other drugs would different fish be on? Dolphins, they always look, like they're on laughing gas or whatever.
Yeah.
Then it just sort of roll with it. And then sort of I had this image of swordfish where they might be dealers because they've got the cutting instruments. They can cut the coke. And it all just sort of, yeah. So I literally, what I do is I have an idea and I sit at a keyboard and I write and I sit down. Like a lot of what I do, like if I'm writing voiceover and stuff, you've got footage that you need to link or you need to go from A to B. And so you'll just sort of, you've just got a certain finite amount of time going. Meanwhile, in Shropshire, or whatever, and you've got to write. And you just sit there, I'll just sit there and I speak it and I write it. And it's exactly the same way as I write comedy. I used to just write it out by hand, but now I just try to keep everything digital. And so I just sit there and I write and I speak and I type as I speak. And sometimes I'll suddenly have a load of images flash in my head. It might be like with that shark routine. It was suddenly I had the images cocaine bear. So I might just write a note at the top, cocaine bear. I might write something else. I might write something else. And then I've got lists at the top. Then I'll just suddenly a line will just appear in my head like not so much line caught tuna as line snort tuna or whatever. Yeah. This was like an hour's work the other day that I did, and it was just literally taking a headline, writing out a topical routine, and I ended up with like a minute and a half. Is it the best routine? No, and the problem is, am I ever going to do it? Probably not. But there are elements to it I might use again, and then I just sit there and I write, and it just comes out, and then I'll go away and make a cup of tea, and I'll recite what I've written, and then suddenly something else will just pop into my head. And my problem is not writing, it's learning the stuff. I mean, as I say, I've always seen myself more of a writer, and it's one of those things. I do it because I have to, not because I want to or because it's a career thing. It's literally I have to write stuff down because there's all these thoughts sort of appear in my head.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will just be a funny idea and I don't know where I'm going with it. I've got a routine I'm working on at the moment. I've been working on for ages and it's really tough to write, but it will be brilliant. But the problem is it's very, very right. It could be quite offensive, and it needs a really good balance of jokes, and it needs a lot of research. Do you want me to tell you about it, or
you can go? Yeah, go for it.
So the basic so I think this could be a great routine, but it's a long way from being finished. But it's based on a true story. Basically, that's the other thing. A lot of my stuff is based on true stories. It's stuff that happens to me. Some of it is literally just describing what happened to me, like my health stuff, and then putting jokes around it. Other things are like the mugging bit, where I work off a framework and then I make it. Take it to a comedic angle or work in another element that's not there. So I'll just sort of start off with what actually happened. What actually happened was, this is actually true. My niece had a party and the DJ was very, very good. He was like an entertainer as well as a DJ. And he was doing all of these games and activities as well as playing the music. And it was great. But he said something which was he said two things that were a bit weird. And I was like, what? During musical statues, he started banging on about the left wokeists, right? And if they had their way, there wouldn't be any statues in London. And then something about the super socialist state if Starmer got in, right? Two political comments. Like, he was trying to be funny. I mean, but I just thought, what a brilliant premise for a routine. An inappropriate DJ coming out with all this kind of conspiracy nonsense. So I've been developed. So it's kind of like I've got this whole thing where I want to do it like with songs and stuff. Like where he talks about, goes off on like 9/11 conspiracies, and you know, sort of comes out and goes, all right, kids, ready to dance with Baby Shark. And remember, kids, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Okay, let's go. And then he, you know, but it needs to be quite intricate. And I like the idea of, like, you know, playing, I can't believe it was 25 years ago since 9/11. Okay, Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
You know, another one bites the dust or whatever, you know. An inappropriate playlist of stuff, you know, conspiracy theories and things like that, you know. Him, you know, going off on about, you know, sealing the borders, or, you know, that's, you know, playing musical chairs. That's what happens if you don't have enough resources in the country to support people coming in. I don't know. So it's dealing with very offensive things, but in a funny way. But yeah, I'm trying to work that at the moment, but it's really tough to get it to work without being massively offensive. I
can imagine it's finding that right balance, because you don't want to lose certain parts of the audience on things like that.
No, and you want it to build and get funnier and funnier. It's one of those things that I'm sort of writing on in the background because it needs a bit more. So that's the thing. Some things just come to you fully formed. Other things I just find if you sit there and type, stuff comes out.
Yeah,
and just go with it, because you can always go back and re-edit it. And sometimes you go off in a direction you hadn't planned to. Other times you don't, and it's a struggle. But this one, I'm going through, trying to work out what topics, trying to work out what potential songs. I kind of want it to be like the misheard lyrics thing of Peter Kay, and also sort of similar to like Ivan Brackenbury's type of hospital DJ thing.
Yeah, that's what crossed into my head when you were talking.
Yeah, funnily enough, before Ivan Brackenbury was doing his thing at university, I had a spoof hospital radio DJ character on our radio station. I did a whole show called Flatline FM. So it wasn't quite. I mean, I think, you know, he was. It's a shame what happened to him, but I think he was a brilliant. Him and Gary Delaney are great writers, and they did a very good show, which was much more advanced than anything I did, but I had something in a very similar vein. So sort of coming back to this children's entertainer thing idea, this kind of terrible children's entertainer is sort of like coming full circle in a way. So I think there's plenty of mileage in it, but it's something I'm working on. But hey, you may see it at a comedy club near you at some point. I don't know.
You'll have to do it as more than just music, though. You have to do like the games that they play.
Yeah, it's got to do the games. Got to do, you know, pin the tail on the left wokist. I don't know. I mean, you know, there's loads of stuff. I've literally got about 50 pages of research for that gag, like different games, different music that could fit, conspiracy theories, you know, alt-right theories, or alt-left, you know, basically all the different, lots of research for what's going to be like a short routine. I think it's got a lot of potential.
It sounds like it'll be a lot of fun, but I can imagine writing it is. I mean, if you're talking about 50 pages worth of stuff, there's a lot of editing in that to try and work.
Oh, that's just notes. That's literally just like pulled stuff off Wikipedia or you know, Reddit or whatever, or you know, YouTube playlists. It's none of it's proper. I mean, there's joke wise, there's about 2 pages of rubbish jokes at the moment. It doesn't quite work. It will get there, but that's the one that I often have 1 or 2 routines that are always what I call long-term projects.
Yeah.
Because the idea is so complicated that it really needs a delicate touch. Other times things just pour out of me.
Yeah, I find that the whole trying to create jokes and stuff like that it's interesting when I have an idea, and if I'm trying to convey the idea to somebody via a text message or something, I find myself self-editing as I go.
Yeah.
And I'm just typing, instead of just typing all the blurb out that's in there, I go, no, that bit doesn't work, come and take that out, and then go back, carry on. And you're kind of doing like the first draft or draft 1.1.
Yeah.
Before you send it to somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, I text there's a couple of people I text regularly. We put material back and forth between each other. And then there's a WhatsApp writing group that we're involved with who share stuff. And that is a good way. Another good way, actually, that I learned from Matt Price. And I did this once, and I haven't done it much since, and I really need to do it much more, is literally just go on stage and talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I've always seen myself as a writer, that's always sort of terrified me. But weirdly, I used to do a lot of emceeing. So I didn't have problems sort of coming up with stuff on stage. It was only the topics I really wanted to talk about I wouldn't normally touch.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking what I might do in the future is do a mix, it's just have like one topic I don't write, and then I just literally talk about on stage, because you'll be surprised at what you come up with when you're faced with an audience. So if you hang it around the framework of, things that work, and then you've got a bit in the middle where you don't know what you're doing, that can be quite a useful way to edit. As I say, I'm sorry to write. I've not done it that much myself, but I did do it once, and it was incredible. That's probably one of the best gigs I ever had, actually. That would be right up there.
Yeah.
I'd just come out of hospital. This was in 2010. I did a gig at the Soho Theatre, and I had a load of friends come, and Matt just said, sit down and talk about what happened. Don't worry too much about, just tell the story. And I did. And that was what turned into the heart story. So the heart condition thing is from quite a long time ago, but it's quite a strong bit. And so I open with that. And then I've got more recent health problems. Gosh, I've got more recent health problems, which I throw into the mix as well. Yeah, just to really sell myself to the ladies. And it's a mix. Yeah, so there's all different types of approaches for writing. Texting is one of them. Getting up and doing it is one, or just sitting. I don't think there's any right or wrong way.
No,
it's what works for you. The most important thing is just to write, and it doesn't matter if it's crap. And that's the other thing. I was moaning to my mate the other day. I was like, I've been writing all this stuff recently, and it's all just rubbish. I just wasn't happy with it. And then I came up with a line, and I was like, oh, that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I try and write every day, but as I say, it's difficult when I'm working. And I'm sort of focused on making other people's shows.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that when you mentioned before about writing for TV. How does that process work? Or is it a really stupid question?
No, not at all. I mean, basically, I started out sort of directing. Well, what happened was I started out many years ago. I worked at I was a runner. I came out of university, and I went straight into running as in a big post-production company. We did all like the original series of Big Brother and a lot of reality TV, a place called Nats in Soho. And when I was there, I met a producer, director, a guy called David Henshaw, who runs a company called Hard Cash. And they kind of liked who I was. They asked me to come and join them as an undercover reporter, which is very, very weird. But anyway, so I was having meetings at Channel 4 at the age of sort of 20 about going in and infiltrating the Labour Party as an undercover reporter to report on their press operations and their recruitment. And it was all in the run-up to the election. They had someone in one of the other parties and someone in Labour and Conservative. And we were basically keeping a video diary going in and doing that. And I stayed... Anyway, we did that programme, and then I stayed on and worked in development, coming up with programme proposals for dispatches. And then that contract ended. Then I got mugged, and then I moved back home to live in Stevenage, and I ended up working in Norwich Union, like what do you call it? A pensions company on the phone in a call centre. I absolutely hated it. I absolutely hated every minute of it. But I got some good material from it, which I haven't done for a while. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from one of my mates who was an editor, and me and him used to make short films together when we were 17, 18, 19. And he was an in-house editor for this little company who used to do a lot of corporate commercials and a few feature films in development. And they had a recording studio. And it was this kind of like one-stop shop for post-production anyway. He'd met this girl in America, and he was going away. And he said, they need someone to come in. And I know you can edit, you've used stuff at uni, because I used to cut a lot at university on Avid. Our uni was the first one in the country to have Avid. So I went over to Tangent, did a job for them as freelance. They hired me. That was mad, because that was the post-production company that used to do a lot of the stuff for Chris Morris's Jam, Day to Day, and the other one, Brass Eye.
Okay.
So Chris was often in the building doing like the DVD extras, and he worked with Adrian, who was Adrian Sutton, who was like a composer and sound designer on a lot of sketches, and like the Brass Eye special and the DVD releases and extra releases. And he went on to do like My Wrongs and 4 line. Anyway, so Chris Morris used to hang around. On my first day, Brian Blessed came in to do a voiceover, and the bloke who played Basil Brush was there to do a voiceover, right? And he was there with a suitcase. And I said, "Who's in the suitcase?" He went, "Basil Brush." I said, "But you're doing a voiceover. No one's going to see him." He said, "I can't do the voice without the puppet."
Yeah,
which is weird. So anyway, so I was there just editing stuff and for people, and then they had a couple of feature films in development, which was really interesting. We had a film that later came out many years later. It was The Bank Job with Jason Statham, and there was Dick St. Clement and Ian LaFrene wrote that script, and they come in, the guys who wrote Porridge. So these were, I was surrounded by my comedy heroes and Basil Brush. And it was a very, very, and this was Soho back in the early 2000s. So there was a lot of drinking and a lot of partying and a lot of, hard work and late nights and stuff. And then I went freelance, and I just I concentrated on editing. And what happened was people would hire me to put together their shows. They don't not often hire a writer or a producer, and they often couldn't write gags as quickly as I could. So I would be like, why don't we do this? Why wouldn't we do that? And then what happened eventually over the years, people just say, we'll get Duncan in to do both. So I sort of just do, I do work with writers and I do work with producers, but a lot of the time I'll just sit there and put it all together myself.
Yeah.
So you get a reputation, and then you get hired by one person, and you get rehired. And sometimes I get in just to gag up a show. Sometimes I get in, but mostly what I do is I'll just get asked to come in and just write. So I just edit, put together the footage, Yeah. But if there's a voiceover that needs writing, I'll do what they call a scratch voiceover, and often they'll end up using that. Not all the time, Sometimes they'll bring in other writers or whatever. But there's a lot of people working in TV who don't have the lightness of touch to do some of the shows that I work on. So some people are either a bit too serious or whatever, and sometimes it just I do a lot of those frivolous kind of travel log shows, and people touring around. It's become a sort of staple of British TV. Comedians going around on tour or whatever.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. I mean, I haven't done any of those in particular. I did do a show with Rosie Jones and James Acaster called Mission Accessible a while back, which was quite good fun, but that didn't need any writing. That was just editing.
Oh, okay.
I've done a lot of comedy stuff. I did 2 series of Russell Howard's Good News. I did 2 series of Go 8 Brit with Dara O'Brien. I did a sitcom with Johnny Pelham. I did a recut and sort of redid Bobby and Harriet Get Married for Comedy Central. And I've done a lot of stuff with Jamie Oliver and other people. And I just finished 50 episodes of Guinness World Records for ABC, which was officially amazing. That was a very interesting story. I probably can't quite go into it. Well, I could go into it, actually. They had... This might have to be cut, but we'll see. They had 100 episodes of this show called Officially Amazing, which used to be on CBBC.
Name rings a bell.
Yeah, it was BAFTA nominated. It's a great show. Really, really good fun. Right, really good. I mean, children's TV is great. Like Horrible Histories, all those sorts of stuff. It's really good if you've got a gaggy sense of humour. But unfortunately, one of the regular contributors has since been arrested. So they basically said, "Oh yeah, we've got 100 episodes. He's in some of them. We need to cut out these episodes, make new episodes." So that's basically what we did. So we took 100 episodes down to 49.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of planning and to get that right. But then after we finished, they basically went, "Oh my God, we've got all the wrong music tracks in it. All of these music tracks are only licensed for the UK market, and this is for international market." I mean, like the first place it was going out was an ABC. So I had to go through and replace all the music on 50 episodes. And the music in these shows was really, really kind of, it's not just it's doing stuff. It's dramatic. It's doing stuff. It works with people doing dramatic records. There's hybrid orchestral stuff. It's really kind of involved. And there was about 30 tracks per episode to replace. So that was 1,500 audio cues to redo. Oh, yeah. So that took a long time. And I was in and out of hospital as well at the start of that, so that wasn't great. So so I finished that. But yeah, so it's doing all sorts of, basically I've got no direction. I'll just go wherever I'm hired. I've never planned anything out. That's probably to my downfall. Is that I just I knew roughly I wanted to work in TV. I knew roughly I wanted to do comedy. I knew roughly I wanted to do that. I just sort of head towards these things and see what happens. And I should probably be a bit more ruthless. But
you've had quite a history then with comedy writing, TV, very mixed, kind of stuff. It's not certainly doesn't sound dull in any way.
No. I mean, I do joke to people. If I died tomorrow, I'd be quite happy. I've had quite an interesting life. I've done all sorts of things. I've worked on some great stuff. Worked on some not so great stuff.
Yeah.
I've had some amazing gigs. I've had some terrible gigs. You know, I've written some jokes I'm very proud of. I mean, I've got jokes that are better than the Parrot one, but that's my current favourite. But yeah, you know, and I've, you know, amount of time that really you just should try and make it all count. So I just try and do things that I enjoy. No,
there's no better thing to do than stuff you enjoy, because otherwise, why would you do it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so kind of rewinding back, if your dodgy, we'll call it your dodgy child's entertainer routine takes shape into a full-on half an hour special, and it gets picked up by the big people out there. So Netflix come calling, for example, and that you sit down with the producers and they say to you, so what kind of music do you want to walk onto the stage to before you do your thing?
Oh, well, for that, it'd have to be specific to that entertainer. But I don't have a comedic enough answer for that. But what I think, I mean, I was thinking about this earlier on. What if I was just doing a one-off special?
Yeah,
I'd probably walk on. I'm a massive Art of Noise fan. Who are a band from the 80s who pioneered the use of sampling. I'm a massive geek, so I'm into all my technology and audio, and I really like their track Close to the Edit.
Okay.
Because I spend most of my life editing, whether it's my own material or other people's. And it's quite funky and quite out of left field.
Yeah.
I like that track. I'll probably come on to that.
Okay, I'm not aware of it, but I'm going to give it a listen.
Basically, it's sampled by the Prodigy in Firestarter. The Hey from Close to the Edit is in Prodigy's Firestarter. You'd know it if you heard it. If you're a kid of the 80s, like we're the same age, so I'm sure you would have heard it. They used it a lot on things like Tony Hart or Vision On or things like
okay.
You'd recognise it. It's quite sample heavy. It's got lots of voices going dum 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 dum. You'd recognise it. It's quite fun. But I'm a huge fan of that group, and they were pioneers of audio collage. So
okay. So what are your kind of future plans then in comedy? Now you're starting to get back into being back on stage and writing and stuff.
I just want to try out all the stuff that I've written and put together a couple of one-man shows and film them.
Yeah.
So going back to sort of the TV stuff, what I've done is over recent years, I've set up a production company. So rather than making other people's stuff, I'm making stuff that I want to make. So at the moment, I'm sort of in the process of trying to get some commissions from the channels and looking at working with new talent, filming other people's comedy specials, those sort of things.
Okay.
So that's one thing that I'm doing as part of the production company. It's called Open Gate. If anyone's interested and got a script they want to send or any TV ideas, I'm quite happy to chat when I get the moment. But for myself, I just want to do a couple of specials. I'm also in the process of making a documentary about another comedian, but that's a long old slog. And that I'm sort of making it's a double-layered documentary. It's about me as well as him, if you see what I mean. So it's about my journey and his journey. The guy's called Matt Price. If you've heard of him, he's a phenomenal act, and one of the guys who's my inspiration.
Okay.
I think he's probably one of the best, if not the best, comic working on the circuit. And he taught me a very valuable lesson. He taught me, one, that there is no such thing as an unplayable room. I mean, I'd like to have seen him struggle down a market, but but no. Basically, I mean, I've done gigs with him. You turn up and you think, well, this is going to be awful, and then see him storm it.
Yeah,
and it's like, wow, how on earth did that happen? And so to my mind, he's the most incredible comic out there, and deserves a lot more recognition and success. And if I could be half as good as him, half as good as Matt Price, I'd be very happy. But all I want to do is try out all my material, work towards a couple of one-man shows, do them at the festivals, and get back onto the sort of paid circuit.
Yeah.
But not busting a gut. I don't. I would like to get onto pro bills again and do those spots. I'm not driven I'm very ambitious in terms of I want to do really, really good work. I want to do stuff where people go, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't care about being famous. I've got no desire to be famous. I did 2 series of Russell Howard, and I work very closely with Russell. He's a lovely human being, an amazing comic, but I would not want that level of fame in any way. I value my privacy, and I like being completely anonymous. I like walking down the street and no one knows who I am. But equally knowing that you're watching stuff I've made, that's to me is the ideal. I've got no desire to be famous, but what I want to do is make really, really good stuff that has an audience, and I'm able to earn some money from the stuff inside my head. Basically, I want the voices to make me cash. No, that sounds weird. No. I don't know why.
So, if you've got a relatively new comic come to you and just ask for one single tip, what is it?
Oh, that's a very good question. One tip.
Just one.
Oh, God.
What's the most common mistake you see that?
Well, the one tip would be keep going. Just keep going. You'll find. I mean, technical. I'm quite happy. I mean, I quite like chatting to new people and giving any advice that I can. But who am I to give advice? I mean, I've been involved with comedy and sort of on and off for 30 years, 26 years, and I'm still playing open mic spots. So it's not as if I'm a huge success. But I do know a little bit about comedy. I think keep writing. That would be. Yeah. That's it. That would be my absolute number one. Keep writing. Write every day because you never know. It doesn't matter even if you write rubbish or even if you write one terrible one-liner. If you have a 1 in 10 hit rate, that's one good gag every 2 weeks. Yeah. If you take weekends off, and then what's that? That's 26 good gags a year.
And if you try to get one laughter every 30 seconds.
I mean, I'm not so. I mean, I was funny actually. I listened back to some stuff the other day, and I realised I'm quite good on my gag rate. My stuff's quite gag heavy.
Yeah.
But I'm actually more interested in telling stories. But I like my stories to be quite gag heavy. But I've got no problem if a setup takes 2 to 3 minutes, as long as it's engaging and there's a really big laugh at the end.
Yeah.
You don't have to be gag. Sometimes it's better if you're not. But I think if I was to give one other bit of advice, I know you asked for only one. Don't compare yourself to other people. Yeah. Just don't worry about anyone else. Worry about yourself and worry about what you do.
Yeah.
Because there are people out there who become very well known, who are just very lucky, and there are other people who are really, really good who don't become very well known, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who'll be better than you when you start out, and people who you will overtake or whatever. None of it matters. Just focus on you, and that's all you can do. Yeah. Because otherwise you'll just drive yourself mad.
Yeah, very true. So on the topic of writing, I'm going to set you the comedian's challenge where you don't have to write. For any new listeners, I'd like to set all the comedians a little challenge from this book called The Little Book of Shit Jokes by Sid Finch. Duncan's just rolled his eyes. Where I challenge all the comedians to pick a joke from this book and tell it live on stage, film it, tag us in it, and all of that kind of jazzy stuff. Except they don't pick the joke by words, they pick it by page number. And I don't know what's on every single page. So what Duncan could pick could be absolute turgid rubbish. But it's an interesting way to see that if it can be woven into a set in any kind of way, shape or form.
I like a challenge.
So, as you just said, I like a challenge. If you can give me a number between 5 and 95.
5 and 95. Well, what's the first number that's picked?
Yeah, that's already been picked.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually Dean's one.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. I would say 77. That was the year I was born. Why not?
77. Oh, okay. There are 2 jokes on this page, but one of them has already gone. So
we'll give you the one that hasn't.
Okay. The joke I want you to tell on stage and film and tag us on Instagram and all that jazz is, my husband demanded that I stop acting like a flamingo. I really had to put my foot down.
Okay. Well, it's nice knowing you. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, to be honest, I've probably got jokes in my set which aren't that good. Yeah, That's fine. I can work with that. Why not? I like a challenge.
I do always say that you can if you want to take I'll call it the chicken's route out. Just say, I've got to do this joke. Bear with me. Let's go with it.
I'll just tell the story of the podcast. I'll say, I was ill prepared. I rambled on like an idiot, made a fool of myself, and then I had to do this joke.
Or you can, if you can work with, I mean,
I can work with it. You'll have to email me it over.
I will. Could that joke not fit with a inappropriate child's entertainer?
Possibly. Possibly.
Imagine if it becomes a permanent part of your set.
Yeah,
I want to see that.
I'd be genuinely really worried. That's the sort of gag I could have done within Downham Market. Oh God!
But no, that's
flashbacks.
It's really interesting to see how some people take the challenge on and how they build a story around such a simple one-liner or something.
Has anyone released any?
Yeah.
Okay, I must check those out. I haven't checked that. As I said, I've only sort of started listening to the podcast recently. As I said, I listened to your Adam Bloom one, which is very, very good. And then I've sort of listened to a couple of people I know that are on there that I've met since coming back. And now I've just rolled back to the beginning, so I'm listening from the start. Yeah, it's really interesting. I love it. I mean, it's very interesting. I don't know if people find my stuff interesting, but I do find a lot of what listening to a lot of people starting out. Yeah, because as I say, I started out in the 90s. It's completely different. And it's one of those weird things coming back to it, because I sort of feel like I've got a bit of a cheat head start, in a way. But also I'm kind of like a bit long in the tooth. And part of me's like, I don't want to do a bloody bringer. It's like, don't you know who I am? No, I don't. No, I don't want to be, not twat about it. But it's like I sort of feel like I paid my dues. It's like I just want to try out the new gags.
I think you're probably in the fortunate position though, where once a promoter's seen you perform once or twice, they'll probably go, just come along.
I mean, I've been very lucky. I've been, I've done a couple of gigs where people have, I've got a bit of paid work off it. I did a gig at G&B. They didn't know who I was at all. And I did 5 minutes, and then they asked me to come back and headline their Dark Night, which was nice. So that was the next gig I did for them. So from open spot to headliner.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's not really it. It's closing the show, I should say. Not really.
You're still headlining it.
But no, it's nice. It was nice to sort of have the confidence. It's not. It's just nice to be. It's nice to know that you're not rubbish at it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's good. Just that little bit of affirmation that I feel I am doing something that people enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, if other people don't, fair enough.
Yeah.
But you hope they do. Yeah, and that's the whole point. I mean, it's nothing quite like getting a laugh.
No,
it's addictive. And,
I think I've said it numerous times. It's the modern way of getting into open mic comedy with doing like a course and then doing your showcase. Then you get the laughs off that. That feels like the gateway drug.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can imagine, because you'll perform to like 200 people or so. Yeah. I would imagine, or quite a large audience, and and then you're back to the reality of gigging life in London.
Yeah, but because you've had that first hit, it's like you are then constantly chasing that first hit again.
I mean, and here's another bit of advice: don't drink. Don't get plastered before your gig. There you go. That's a good bit of advice. I mean, it's all right to have one or two if you drink. I quit drinking myself about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. That's been a revelation. Being sober all the time is, I highly recommend it. And that's also made me a lot more productive, I have to say. But it is an addictive thing to get into, comedy, and like all addictions, approach with caution, I suppose.
How can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Instagram's Duncan Hart Comedy. Twitter is Duncan_Hart. Facebook, Duncan Hart. I've got a Duncan Hart comedian page, but I don't really use that. And then YouTube is Duncan Hart. Or they can find my production company, Open Gate Comedy. They can search for Open Gate Comedy, and if they've got any ideas or want me to film their stuff, then they can get in touch. Yeah, so that's it, really.
Cool. I'll put those links in the description of this podcast, so anybody that clicks on this can get to you fairly quickly and easily. You can find us on Instagram, Open Mic Comedy Pod. We're on the W's, openmiccomedypod.com. I always ask this, whichever platform you're listening to this on, please go up and give us a follow if you're not already, and give us a little review. Click a number of stars that only include the number 5. Helps get us up the charts a little bit. And I will say thank you very much for your time today, Duncan.
You're welcome.
And until next time, everybody else, I'll speak to you all very soon.